Hello everyone. Today I'm going to look at showing you how to develop an idea. To develop an idea is simply to make it better. So you're going to improve one of your initial ideas, and to do that you're going to do it step by step. By doing something step by step, it's much more easy to manage the workload. When we're developing our idea, we have to think about the design factors that are involved with design. So we need to think about function, or what it does. We need to think about aesthetics, or how it looks. We need to think about market. All this means is, who is the intended end user? Who is going to use the product? We need to think about something called ergonomics. And we can summarise that by saying it's designing it so it's easy to use. And then lastly, we need to think about performance. Now in S1 and S2, we're really concentrating on how something is maintained. So maintenance, what you need to do to look after it. And also, we're thinking about what makes it robust, what makes it strong enough over a long period of time, or tough enough. So that's what we call durability. So these are the areas that we need to develop. Firstly, and this is the most important thing to do, is to break it down into sections. And the first areas I want you to look at when we're doing development work is looking at the function and looking at aesthetics. So first of all, we need to make sure that our product works, and then we'll worry about how it's going to look. We already have a rough idea of how it's going to look because we did our initial idea. But what I mean by function is I need to know that every single piece of our design works properly, and do any of these pieces need altered or modified to make our whole product function properly. Now, I'm going to work on this design by splitting it into different sections. I've got the wooden pieces in the background, so I will need to work on those. Actually, that one went in front, didn't it? So I need to work on these wooden pieces to make sure that they are going to function properly. I'm going to have to focus on the water coming over the lip of the waterfall. I'm going to have to do some work on the foaming water at the bottom of the waterfall. I also need to think, for the function of this, it's a postcard holder. So how do the postcards fit onto this product as a whole? So I better sketch a wee postcard again here, just to remind myself that that's really the whole reason behind the design, is that I'm looking at designing something to help me remember where I was by gathering postcards. And this is a postcard of Victoria Falls. I think I'll put a rainbow in this one as well, actually. It's quite nice. That might come into my final design. I like that idea. A wee rainbow coming out of the waterfall. So this is my supports. It's a good idea to name each of your ideas. This is the waterfall. This is my foaming water, and I do apologise because that was out of the shot beforehand. And this is my postcard. My main question for my postcard is how does it attach? Okay. Now I'm not going to expect you to sit and watch me think things out and sketch things and note things down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work on function first of all, and I'm going to look at each of these to turn them into something that functions better than they do already. Once I've done that, I'll look at aesthetics. Once I've done that, I'll look at market, then ergonomics and performance. Once I've done that, I check all of my design against the specification to make sure it does what it's meant to do. I'm now going to concentrate on the wooden backboard, so I'm going to fly through what I think needs to be done with that to develop the idea to make it better. You can see here that I've taken the back plate from my initial idea and I've sketched it out, and I've thought, how's this piece going to join to this piece? I've written my question down. How does it join together? I always use arrows to point me in the direction of flow. Now flow is very important because essentially with a design folio, we're telling a story. So step one is this one. Let's work out how I could join it together in different ways. So I could just take a cut out here, and then this corner would slot into here. To me, that's not very strong. So what I've done is on this little bit here, I could try using a dowel, and then I would have to drill a hole in this piece that would slide over the top of that. So that increases strength, but allows me to keep the look of the original one. Another option to achieve this overall shape is to take one piece or one shape of plywood or something similar and just remove two corners but leave the same overall shape. So this is clearly having an effect on function because it's going to still be successful at holding the waterfalls that could come up off the top of this rim, for example, but it's also having an effect on aesthetics. So this is just a flat sheet now. It maybe doesn't look as interesting and it's a bit bland. While I was doing this, I thought, if I went back to my original one, but one of my pieces of wood was thicker and one was thinner, that could affect the aesthetics quite nicely. So again, I'm going to sketch this one out like so, and have the thickness of wood something like this. And I'm going to keep that dowel in there because I think I need that strength, but my second piece of wood is going to be thicker. And because it's going to be thicker, it's going to change the design, and I'll sketch that for you now. So I've sketched this new design for the backboard as it would appear. I've used perspective sketching so it looks like it's getting smaller as it goes away from you. It's affected the function, so I've said it still has to be joined so as it's flush on the back, therefore it will mount on the wall properly, but it still has the aesthetic improvement of the thinner piece and the thicker piece. Now when I have my water coming over the edge, however that's going to look, it's going to be at different levels, and that's what it's like at Victoria Falls in Africa, so that's going to be an improvement for the aesthetics. I'll do a better sketch of this later on. Functionally, I still need to think, actually, how is this going to join to the wall? So I might sketch a couple of ideas for that now. I now have two options for joining my backboard to the wall. I could drill a hole through the corner. I could do that at each corner, and then I could use a screw to attach that onto the wall. The other option is I use a picture hanging hook, I attach that to the back of the backboard, put a nail in the wall and just hang it up. To me, I think it's going to be neater and tidier, and it's going to be nicer to do it with a nice screw going through this hole. So So I'm going to select this one because the aesthetics are going to be better than this one. This one could look quite ugly. This one I'm going to put a cross next to. As we go through the development process, you will see that you have options for each part. So down here, I could have just a glued joint, but then I decided I could have a dowel joint just round here to hold it in more firmer. Then I thought actually I could get rid of the joint, it'd be even stronger, but the aesthetics aren't as nice. Then I thought actually I could improve the aesthetics and keep it quite strong with the dowel joint I said before by having a thick piece and a thin piece. So I've looked at my options here. In this instance here, I've worked through a story and I've come to a conclusion. This is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say this is my choice. And then over here, I've got two options, A and B, for how it attaches to the wall, and I've chosen A. So I've put a wee tick next to this option here. There's option A, there's option B. I'm choosing option A because aesthetically it's going to look nice and it's also going to functionally be very strong. With this page being nearly complete, I can move on to the next page where I will develop the waterfalls that are coming over the edge of the waterfall. I can show the water coming over. I will decide what materials I could use, how I could shape or form them, what colours they could be, how am I going to join it together to this piece, what's it going to do to fulfil its function of holding postcards, all of that kind of thing. Here we are on the next page. I've resketched the backboard where it would join to the wall, just finishing that now, where I could have some holes to join it to the wall. The next phase would be for these waterfall sections that I said could be, in my initial idea, I said it could be pieces of acrylic material that could just hang off the edge here and the postcards could get stuck to them. So I need to investigate this a bit more. Is it the best way to do it? Are there any alternatives? How's it all going to work together? Now through sketches, what I've done here is I've shown you I've got an acrylic sheet. I can slice that up, so I've marked it out where it would be sliced up, and I'm going to get several little pieces that could be made into water. I need to figure out how to do that now. Now, acrylic is a thermoplastic material, okay? If I take a thermoplastic, this is a type of plastic that if you put heat into it, when it gets to a certain point, it gets soft. So what I can do is I can change the shape of it. So the heat comes in, the plastic gets soft. I can now either bend this. So here's one of my strips here. I can put a bend like this in it. Now it's not exactly a right angle like that, but it can be close. Or, instead of bending, I can shape the plastic. To shape it, I would heat it up, and then I could maybe form this kind of shape here. Now for this is me thinking, how am I going to put it onto the backboard? This is option A, this is option B. Now option A, what I could do is I could, looking at a side view, here's my plastic from the side, I could do something like this where I bend it once and I bend it again, and then it slides over the top of the wood. So it fits over the top of it here. Slide over. However, that might stop me putting the backboard right against the wall. So something else I might do is I might just have it coming up and going across like that. And then the distance here would be the same as on the piece of wood. So that would fit on top of there. That's probably a better idea than this. let's see what bending can do. So if I bend my plastic, what I might be able to do, here's the wood, there's the plastic coming up. If I bend it, it would have to do something like that. So actually it might look nice where it bends over the top, but actually in reality it's going to be difficult to join to the wall, and also it's going to be more difficult to join to the wood. Talking about joining to the wood, what I could do here, and here's another sketch, what I could do there is before I bend my plastic, I could drill a hole, and then I'll be able to screw my plastic into the wood. So that hole would be what we call a clearance hole. A clearance hole is just a hole that is slightly bigger than the screw that we go through to attach it. Now we need to look at how we're joining the acrylic to the wood, and I'm going to tell you about pilot holes and clearance holes. Now this is the wood here, which is getting shown by being yellow, and I'm going to put a little bit of green on it. I've not decided what type of wood it is yet, I can do that later on. Into the top of the piece of wood, I'm going to drill a small pilot hole. Now the pilot hole is smaller than the size of the screw, whereas a clearance hole is bigger than the size of the screw just. This one here, this is a pilot hole. The hole through the acrylic is a clearance hole. The pilot hole is likely to be something like 2mm diameter, whereas the clearance hole is likely to be something like 4mm diameter, because the screw that I'm going to use, this piece here, will be just under 4mm. That means this can pass through here, and then this section here pulls down on the plastic, whereas this bit here, this screws into the pilot hole. At the moment we're supposed to be developing the function and the aesthetics of each of our pieces. Now this part here, remember, this is where my postcards are supposed to be going. So here's one from the front, and the postcard would just maybe go on something like this. And it means you can fit 2 or 3 postcards down each of the pieces of water. Now we need to work out how is this going to work. Now, sometimes the best idea is a simple idea. So A, we could just use blue tack. Maybe option B, I could use small pegs. Option C, maybe double-sided tape. Now for me, out of these, the simplest one really is the best, and just using blue tack. The reason for this is it can go onto the acrylic, it won't damage it, it can get peeled back off again. If I use pegs, that's something else to lose, something else to go wrong. If I use double-sided tape, it's going to leave a mess on the acrylic. It might not all come off when I peel the postcard off if I change the postcard over, so it could leave a mess. the pegs might have more cost, but the blue tack is reusable. So I'm going to choose blue tack as the means to join our postcard onto the water feature. On this page I've been talking about the materials that can be used. We've talked about how to shape them and form them, how they can be attached together to other pieces of material. While we're talking about these little bits of water that are running down the waterfall, we might as well talk about how big they have to be to do their job properly. Now it's quite hard to imagine doing this without actually having the thing that has to be held. So I've got a wee sketch of a postcard here. Now the postcards are generally about 150 long by about 90 across. Now it's still quite hard to imagine that. So what I've done is I've made a model. So this is a model of my postcard. It's actual size, so it's 150 long by 90 tall, and I'm just going to pretend that this is my postcard. So for this stage of the development process, we're going to gain marks for the use of models, but also for exploring and refining. So exploring is when we look at options, and refining is when we make decisions. And what I want to do is I want to decide how long and wide the piece of acrylic is that's going to hold each of my postcards. So I've got my postcard. This is a piece of acrylic here that's been used for another project. Now you can see it's a thick material, it's about 3 or 4 millimeters thick here. It comes in a big flat sheet. This is totally the wrong colour, but it comes in blue too. It's got holes drilled in this piece, so you can see how successful somebody can be drilling holes. But we can't use this for a little bit of model making because it would take just as long as making the actual product itself. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use card instead, or some blue paper. Here's some blue paper. Here's my postcard. Okay. Now, what I have here is a lot of sun coming in the window, so give me a second. Okay, that's better. I've just popped off there and I've shut the blind to stop the sunshine coming in. Now, I've got my postcard here, and I'm going to pretend this is a piece of acrylic, and I'm just going to cut pieces up to see what it looks like. A postcard, and I've got different sizes of acrylic strip cut, and imagine they're hanging from the piece of wood, and the postcard would just simply be stuck on. Now if I do it like this, I'm going to have room for maybe 2 postcards on each one. That might be enough. Okay, now the other thing is the width of my waterfall. I think this looks a bit skinny in proportion with the card. The proportions about relationships between sizes, this looks a bit skinny to me. I cut another thicker one, so I'm going to see if that's okay. I think that looks a bit better. I could even go a bit thicker than that. Give me a second, I'm going to check. So now I've cut another even longer piece from a piece of A3 paper, and I could put my postcard on here. I could imagine I could get one here, and one here. I might get 3 postcards down that one, which is quite cool. However, if I was on holiday and I bought this postcard storage product and had to put it in my suitcase, it might get quite annoying and it could get broken as well. So I think what I might do is I might stay for a wee bit wider, but actually with this thickness here, or maybe just a wee bit thicker. So what I can do now is I can measure this, and then I can put my measurements on here to say that's what it's going to be. Now we also need to remember that this is just the length and the width of the piece of acrylic we want showing, but actually at the top here there'll be a fold for the other piece to bend away. So I need to know the thickness of my piece of wood that I would add on the end of here. So the extra here I would add on the length to the acrylic would be the same as the thickness of the piece of wood, so I need to come back to that later. But talking about the piece of wood, we're doing model making at the moment, so I might as well work out the size of my wood. So all I've done here for this model, I've got a piece of A4 paper. I'm just going to fold it, and that will give me a representation of the size of the piece of wood I would like. Now, I think something like that could be absolutely fine. And then that means that this piece of acrylic will be hanging down the front here with my postcard number 1 sitting like this maybe, and then my second postcard down here, I can even, on this 2D model, this is called sketch modelling, I could even mark on where my holes are going to go for putting this piece on the wall, and then I would do the same for the second piece of wood which is going to join onto here. So right away I'm getting my sizes sorted out for the piece of wood as well. I'm just going to keep going through this folio now, and I'm going to repeat what I've done for the rest of it. I'm looking, number one, at the function and what each part needs to do, make sure it does it successfully. Number two, I need to think about aesthetics, make sure it's going to look good enough, and also make sure it's well finished. Number three, I need to make sure all the different pieces go together. I need to figure out if the whole product then does what it's supposed to do and it performs properly. So I'll just do a time lapse for the rest of this video, and you'll see towards the end me coming towards the design proposal.